Ahead of the Juneteenth holiday weekend, gas prices are hovering right near a record high, $5 a gallon. Our next guest says President Biden should immediately call together a task force to work on lowering prices and addressing shortages in the economy. He encouraged the president, he's encouraged that he's moving in the right direction after his letter to energy companies criticizing well above normal refinery profit margins. Joining us now, Democratic Congressman Khanna of California. And Congressman, it's always good to see you there. I'm wondering whether you've had any type of evolution in your thinking on this issue, given where we are right now. And you know what I'm referencing back in October of last year, when you were talking to some of these CEOs and praising BP and Shell, the CEOs, for reducing their oil production over in Europe, and saying, are you at this point embarrassed as an American company, to Chevron CEO, are you embarrassed that your production is going up while the European counterparts are going down? Don't you want our companies, our domestic companies, to increase production at this point? That was clearly not the right action to be asking these CEOs to do back in October. Was it?
Joe, it's a fair question. I think we have to distinguish between the long term and the short term. Of course, we need short term production to go up. What I was talking about in that clip, and if people see the whole testimony, is how do we diversify our energy sources over the long run so that we're getting 1%, 2% going more into renewable energy. But short term, there's no doubt that we need our production to go up. I have advocated that explicitly. And one of the ways we can do it is to have an export ban. Here's what I want to understand. Why are we sending more oil to other countries when we have a problem here with supply? We never used to do that before 2015. We could have that ban now, and it would dramatically lower gas prices.
We could have that ban right now, but it would really put the screws to our friends and allies in Europe who are dealing with some big problems caused by Vladimir Putin in Russia, and I don't think we want to do that. And, Ro, I think the honest answer to the honest question on some of these things, too, are you want short-term production, not long-term. And I think we want refineries to be able to pump out more gasoline right now because that's part of the problem. We don't have the refinery capacity. But those are not investments that businesses are going to make if we are telling them this is for the short term. We want them to spend billions of dollars to make additional investments that, by the way, we don't want those investments to continue producing a decade from now. It doesn't make financial sense. There are consequences when you say you don't want things over the long haul. Businesses stop spending CapEx, and that's what the oil companies have done. It's a little disingenuous to say we want you to produce short term, but then we're going to take away your ability to make money off those investments, those major investments we've asked you to make.
Well, Becky, I think that's not what the position of the party is. The position is that we want to diversify. Look, if the oil companies had been honest about global warming and had diversified since the 1970s, we would have had much more stable prices. I don't see there any problem to say 1%, 2% of your long-term investments should be in renewables and diversification. And the export ban would work for two reasons. Here's what the oil companies they say. They say we make light shale oil right now here. We don't produce the crude oil. Most of our refineries are for crude oil. But you could have a one-to-one exchange of the light oil to crude oil. And you could have an exception for some of our European allies. I agree with you there. But why are we sending the oil to China? Why are we sending oil to other countries? We are an oil surplus country, and yet we are totally dependent on the global price. That doesn't have to be the case.
But have you seen what's happened to natural gas prices since Tuesday? Congressman, since Tuesday, natural gas prices in Europe have gone up 50%. That's because of two things. One, the export facility in Texas that caught on fire, meaning we're not going to be shipping them any more LNG for months. The second is that the Russians have really put the screws to them and said, we can't ship them. They're claiming that there's some equipment that's gone wrong, but you know what's really happening here. 50% higher in Europe in 4 days. I mean, these are the people we're supposed to help fight Vladimir Putin right now, and this is what's happened to them.
Sure, and I'm for supplying to our allies and some of our European allies. I'm not for supplying to China and to the rest of the world while Americans are paying $6 at the pump. The other thing I said that the government could do is to have bought preemptively when the price of oil was low I called for that when the price was in the low hundreds, and then sell back to the American public at a subsidized price. Every president has done that. Many of them have done that in the past. President Reagan did it with dairy prices. FDR did it. So there are tools we can take. But here's my view. My view is, of course, right now we need to focus on lowering price and increasing the oil supply. But long term, what's really going to bring price stability is more of the diversification of our energy sources.
Well, there's a lot of people, Ro, or congressmen, that think it's going to be at least 2050 before we can significantly lower fossil fuels, whether it's natural gas. And that's the other thing. When a certain side looks at some of your ideas, they pull in their hair out. Not only the export ban, but the windfall profits tax. They call these zombie ideas that we've tried back in the 70s and 80s under President Carter, President Nixon. And the idea that raising the costs through a windfall profit tax for oil companies is going to increase production is just economic gobbledygook. It would never happen if you raise costs that they already are worried about large capital outlays because they can't look at the future in a positive way, given who's going to be in the White House and who's going to be in Congress. The rug gets pulled out for them on these long-term projects. If you raise the cost with a windfall profits tax, it's going to, like it did back in the 80s and 70s, it's going to hurt production, not help production.
Well, Joe, let's look at two facts. First, look at the charts in 1980, early 1980s, after Carter's windfall profits tax. You'll find that production actually went up and prices went down.
Now, Ro, that was from Alaska. We opened up Alaska. That's just conflating two different things that caused the big production increase.
But it didn't. The economists can debate it, but the prices didn't really go up and production down until the mid-1980s. That's when it was repealed. I mean, for the first few years. But the second point is this. Look, if the oil companies were making these extraordinary profits, and no one's denying, I mean, President Biden has said they're making more money than God. If they were making all this money while my constituents were paying $6 at gas, and they were putting that money in more refinery capacity or more drilling, I'd say, okay. But you know that's not what's going on. They're putting the money into sheer buybacks in Wall Street.
It's the policies of your party that are preventing them from wanting to use that money for that. And the exorbitant profits, I mean, what do we do with Google's profits? Oh, they're pretty good from time to time. Are you going to reimburse the oil companies for those year after year where a lot of them went out of business because they couldn't even make any money? What do we do in lean times to these companies? Do we reverse the amount that they've earned in good times? Do we somehow reimburse them for what they lost in bad times? What's a reasonable profit margin in your view, Rowan? You're a big capitalist out in Silicon Valley. Heck, you'd have to go to every one of those all those tech companies are making way too much. They're all making more than 10% profit margins.
And they have zero capex.
But they're
right.
Sorry, go ahead, Becky.
No. They have zero capex. It doesn't cost them money. I mean, tech companies are so strong because they don't have to put back in the money that you want the oil companies to put back into the ground.
Well, look, here's the point. I have no problem with companies making a large profit. I have a problem when it's being caused by a national emergency. There is no doubt that the cause of one of the biggest causes is Putin's invasion of Ukraine. And the point is, Americans are patriotic and they're paying a lot. And in a time of an emergency caused by that, I think the excess profits that tax can go towards putting money in the
Congressman, you'd say the same thing about Pfizer and Moderna taking advantage of a pandemic to sell vaccines. You'd say Zoom shouldn't be making these products because everybody's at home and they're cashing in on the pandemic. Netflix is doing too well because people are sitting at. You can go on and on and on where what happens in good. There's things that are helpful to companies and things that hurt companies depending on the situation. I don't think they're taking advantage of a crisis. The oil price is set not by U.S. companies. It's a global marketplace that sets these prices.
Well, if we had an export ban, we'd have a little more independence. But look, I'm not questioning the motives. I understand the oil companies, they're responsible for their shareholders. My point is, you've had Vladimir Putin invade Ukraine. The consequence of that, one of the consequences is gas is at $6. There are other causes of inflation, but this is one of the reasons gas is going that high. And why not use some of all the money that's being made? Why not use some of all the money that's being made? Why not have some tax on that and put it back in the pockets of American consumers?
We keep talking about it, but it's never going to get out of committee. And for the last 20 years, we've been talking about reinstituting some type of windfall profits when it's never had any chance of getting anywhere.
Boris Johnson did it.
What's that?
Boris Johnson did it in England.
And now he wishes he hadn't, because it's not working, he just said. I don't know. This is our first fight. I don't know if we're going to.
Don't kick me off your ticket, Joe.
We're going to have to talk.
Don't kick me off your ticket.
We're going to have to talk. Yeah, if we're really going to be on a ticket together. Although we would cover. We've got everyone covered in our ticket, kind of like the show here. I hope
you were rooting for the Warriors last night. Big win for the Warriors.
I bet on the Giants a few times. I've been disappointed, but other times I've been happy with that. That's a solid team you got there. That is a solid. How about Green? Wow, talk about stepping up, right? And the MVP.
Big game.
And the MVP. Steve Kerr kind of bugs me from time to time, but
he's a good man. He's a good man. You'd like him. You'd like him. You should have him on your show. He's a good guy.
I love it from the Bulls.
I just, I know he's got opinions. I have them too, but I never express mine. See